It was a wet Tuesday morning. I was already late. I've got, thankfully, one child who's calm, not really paying attention. The other one clinging to me, sobbing, wiping snot all over me, which was a good job that snot was as an accessory was in that year. I was heading to a minimum wage job, temporary role that bore absolutely no resemblance to the career that I used to have, which did make the snot feel even more futile. This role wasn't career adjacent. It wasn't a step down. It was an entirely different universe. And that moment sticks with me, not just because of the noise and the mum guilt and the snot, but because it summed up what happened in my life so beautifully. It was like a metaphor for my life. Before my eldest son was born, just a few years earlier, really, I'd been a successful, respected, and well paid financial advisor. I had a strong client base, solid reputation, and a salary that reflected that I knew what I was doing. Then life happened. Career break became longer than planned, qualifications had expired, and the world had moved on without waiting for me. And when I was finally ready to come back, something deeply uncomfortable became obvious. The market no longer recognised me and my value. I literally felt like milk that had gone past its sell-by date. My experience didn't translate, my credibility wasn't assumed, and my past, it might as well have been a fun fact from a previous life. I had years of experience, but I had no place in a system that had rewritten those rules while I was busy being a mum and being responsible. So, what happened? My pride packed its bags, stormed out, slamming the door behind it. And I rang every recruitment agent site I could find. I said, I don't care what it is, just give me something. And that was how I ended up in a 6-week minimum wage contract. It was humbling, it was bruising, and inside, it was a little bit rage inducing, but it was also clarifying. Because once I was back inside the system, and I stopped taking it quite so personally, I started watching it and really watching it properly. I paid attention to who progressed and who didn't, who was visible and who seemed to mysteriously just disappear, and who got described as promotable and who got described as safe. And that was when the penny really dropped. Hard work wasn't the problem, but nor was it the solution. Experience wasn't the problem, but nor was it my solution. Waiting to be recognised absolutely was the problem, and I knew it couldn't be the solution. So I stopped waiting. I got deliberate about how I showed up. I got really strategic about how my value was communicated, and I stopped presenting my experience as a history and started framing it as future leverage. With every book that I read, every course that I took, every conference that I attended, my awareness grew and grew. With every job move that I made, my earnings increased. And, in the round, with every step that I took, my confidence grew. Just 10 years after that wet Tuesday morning, I was in a 6-figure consulting role with a notable absence of snot. I had rebuilt my career entirely on my own terms, and in doing so, increased my income by more than 1,000%. But the rebuilding of my income, great as that was not the most important thing. The most important thing was that my understanding had grown. I realised that experience only works, and this is very topical right now. My experience only works if it's visible, if it's relevant, and it's positioned properly. Because if it's not those things, your experience will just sit there, quietly aging, while the system just strolls on by. Rebuilding my career did not just restore my confidence, it totally rewired how I saw the world of work. I could now see patterns. I could see who advanced and who stalled, how experience was framed, and how easily that experience could be dismissed if it didn't fit into that modern template. And, I started to realize these really uncomfortable things. What I do know is that it's not individual women, but it is the system. And that system is not going to fix itself. And I think for me, that was when the idea of simply finding my next role stopped being enough. I'd always wanted to earn my own business, but I just didn't like the chaos of starting from scratch. And I think what I was also looking for, not just as a business, but I wanted a platform that gave me some credibility, some reach, and some leverage. And so Resume Pilots wasn't a leap, it was a strategic response. Because, and trust me when I say this, I do know what it feels like to be capable but overlooked, to have literally decades of experience that doesn't seem to fit into a modern hiring system. And also, for me particularly, to realise that time matters and that waiting is not even neutral. Waiting is the risk. So today, with Resume Pilots, my work is with women aged 40 to 55 who are being erased in plain sight and are sick of it. We're not talking about women who've been fired. We're not talking about women who've failed. We are talking about women just like me who are being politely ignored. And let's be real, sometimes it's not even that politely. These are women who are still delivering, still leading, still carrying institutional knowledge. And that knowledge is, yes, your organisation will miss when it's gone. For me, the frustration is that for years, women, and I did this, did what they were told, built experience, stayed loyal, waited their turn, and then woke up one day to discover that the system had changed and nobody thought to mention it. And it's their careers that are suffering as a result. Well, on behalf of any career-driven woman in her 40s and 50s, I'm here to say no more. And hopefully you feel the same too. Currently, today's hiring market, it's not rewarding depth or tenure. It's rewarding optics, judgment, speed, and the one that I think is particularly critical is results that can be replicated. And it rewards people who just don't look like a risk on paper. But the worrying thing for me is that in this current market, if women continue to be routinely ignored, what happens is highly capable women start shrinking themselves, which doesn't release their value. They start second guessing themselves and potentially blaming themselves, and then they leave the workforce because decisions about their careers are being made in rooms that they're not invited into. Now, I want to be absolutely, completely crystal clear when I say this. This is not a woman problem. This is not a mindset issue. This is not even imposter syndrome. And it is most definitely not a confidence workshop away from being fixed. This is a systemic problem. It's a power problem. And it is a positioning problem. And that's why the work that I do is for women who refuse to age out quietly. And I work with them to make their experience absolutely impossible to ignore, to reclaim their authority, and to take up space again in a system that was designed without them in mind. Because, and I include myself in this category, our emotionally intelligent experience does matter. It still matters. But if you don't know how to get the market to see it, then the market replaces you with somebody who's cheaper, quieter, and easier to ignore. So, if you are a woman in your 40s and 50s and this talk has hit a nerve, it won't be by accident. It's a signal. You don't need fixing. You don't need permission. You definitely don't need to wait your turn. What you need to do is figure out how to fit into this system. If you're ready to make your experience absolutely impossible to ignore, and you want to take up space again in a world that wasn't really designed for you, but does need you, come and find me. I'm at resumepilots.com and I can be found on LinkedIn. Let's stop asking for a seat at the table and start changing who the table's built for. I'm Zoe Price. I'm the CEO of Resume Pilots.